everyone. Hi, Rob.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Oh, we're so happy to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much for being here for the first episode in our new series, Caring for the Roots. We're so excited to have you. If you are tuning in from one of our streaming sites, go ahead and drop your name and your location in the comments, not too specific, like Christy from Lancaster, and then where you would rather be quarantining if you could pick anywhere in the world right now. Rob, do you have a good answer for that question?
Yeah, you know what? I do. I do. You know what? If I could be, I would be quarantining in Fiji. Like,
Oh,
imagine in Fiji, like just chilling, like Fiji water. That's all I.
yeah. That's
That is
such a good answer.
what I'm thinking about.
Yes, I think I would want to be quarantining inside of a Chipotle restaurant in like New Zealand or something. So yeah, if you guys are listening, drop name, location, and where you would prefer to be quarantining in the comments. Before we dive in, I'm going to give you guys a little background on who we are, what we do. I'm Christy Heimbach, and when I was 19, I hopped on a plane to Zimbabwe because I had recently learned this statistic that every 2 seconds, someone in the world dies of a hunger-related cause. And I quickly learned that I was part of the problem, and I was eagerly traveling abroad in hopes of serving others without any notion of really how to do that responsibly. And I had the best of intentions, but totally embodied this kind of white savior mentality as I started the organization, 2 seconds or less, in hopes of ending childhood malnutrition. Luckily, through a series of miraculous events, I ended up partnering with just really incredible local leaders. And together we identified what communities needed to thrive. So things like a sustainable means of food production, access to education, and employment opportunities that could pull families out of poverty. And if you know anything about Zimbabwe, you know that's no small feat. There's about a 90% unemployment rate, or like informal unemployment rate. School attendance rates are under 46%. And then about 83% of the entire population lives like in poverty, sometimes under $2 a day. But in the last 9 years, we've created some long-term Zimbabwean-led solutions in schools and homes across the nation that has ensured over 3,000 students are getting at least one meal a day. We've seen attendance rates in our schools skyrocket, in some places to over 250%. And we've supported 500 women entrepreneurs in building and scaling their businesses. We've seen 260 of those projects really scale to be able to feed their families and the communities around them. I did want to share one quick story as I'm kind of going through who we are, what we do, telling you a little bit about us as you're joining in. So one of my favorite stories from this year is about a woman named Joanna who grew up as a double orphan in Zimbabwe in a child-led home. And she took 50 chickens and submitted an application to TUSOL and our partner organization saying, I have big dreams for this project. What can you do to help? So she received our training for $11. That's all that it cost to do this training. And we gave her a small grant. And within that small grant and the training, she ended up doubling her chickens and her confidence after just a few months. And today, she's helped over 10 women start and grow their own poultry businesses. And now together, they're producing up to 200 chicks every single week. So this is one of the many things that I really think kind of sets 2 seconds or less apart from other organizations. It's because we have pretty low financial investment for a really high reward. So although we're incredibly passionate about food security, it doesn't end there. We equip leaders to create equity in their communities and around the world. And how we serve American students is also an important piece of the puzzle. So I don't know if you guys know anything about this, but around the world, we spend over $2 billion on mission trips every single year. And we need to ensure that that money doesn't leave unintended consequences to our most marginalized neighbors. And I mean, this is an enormous feat, considering that about 84% of people that go abroad on missions trips had no prior training before leaving the country, which is crazy to us. So our high school residency encompasses experiential learning opportunities that develop social consciousness. And we try to make our study abroad program really focus on cross-cultural competencies and really understanding the people that are outside of our personal communities. So the relationship between our Zimbabwe beneficiaries and our student leaders is definitely a reciprocal one. And we know that through our focus in long-term solutions, every day is going to just continue to have that ripple effect, and we're going to change the world in ways that we're never going to see and that we'll never know. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. I want to get to Rob getting to speak. So obviously we have been in a crazy season with 2020, as all of you know, but the need is unfortunately just as urgent as ever. As you're listening to this event with us, I really hope you'll consider giving to 2 seconds or less. We'll have ways that you can do that throughout this video, and at the end of the presentation, we're also going to give out some cool prizes, some TwoSol swag. So please engage and ask questions and just have fun with us. We are doing this to just kind of give back to our community. We're entering into this giving season wanting to give back ourselves. And that's kind of what brought us to this series. We just wanted to provide some much needed education on topics that are relevant to what we do. So I have the honor and privilege today of welcoming Rob Chifokoyo to our series. I'm going to put Rob's bio on the screen here. So basically, Rob is a man of many talents. He was born in Zimbabwe and moved just a few years to Doylestown, PA after a crazy event in his life that I will let him speak on. He is now a pastor at Doylestown and has just had his hand in so many things that are changing the world every day. He's also a father to Hope and Nakai, his daughters, who are also just angels, and his wife, Lisa, who is a total rock star as well. And he's also an author. So part of our swag is going to be giving some of Rob's books out to people in the end. And he is producing books. Is the terminology like hotcakes? Is that like a thing? Like rabbits, like hotcakes?
It's a thing. Hotcakes is a thing for sure.
Yeah. Seriously, this man is on a mission this year, always so busy, doing so many cool things. Rob, can you tell us a bit about your relationship to TwoSol, what brings you here today, what the organization means to you, and then we'll kind of dive into your keynote.
Yeah, well, thank you for that super intro. Books popping up like hotcakes. I love that. I might coin that, put that maybe as my Instagram bio.
Yes.
But yeah, I love TwoSol. I love the work that they're doing. And I'll tell you, as a Zimbabwean, home is home. I moved all the way 7,500 miles away, and just my heart and my great desire, even the picture behind me that my friend Dan sketched out for me and framed is of a boy named Tanaka, and it's just something at the forefront of my heart, which is just loving the least of these, like just people who have been forgotten, are so precious and so valuable. And as a pastor, obviously they're so precious and valuable to God, so they're so precious and valuable to me. So when I moved to the States, my friend Dan was like, "Yo, there are these people who are working in Zimbabwe. They're doing an amazing work in our homeland, the motherland." So he was like, "But they're in Lancaster." And so we drove, and I met with Kelsey, and I was like, "What?" And it was just such a fruitful conversation, which just led me to meeting the whole TwoSol team, meeting Christy, and we just it just like a house on fire, like just the hearts that they had, and to make an impact in the way that they're doing it, I think is amazing. I think going as 19-year-olds and going, okay, we're gonna, here's what we're gonna do, we're gonna save everyone, and then learning and growing through that process and seeing that it's actually the partnership and equipping and just mutual respect that happens in terms of missions. I think TwoSol is so intentional about, which really just makes my heart beat, because it's in my backyard, it's my home country. And so, yeah, I'm here because I don't want it to stop. I wanted to go from from glory to glory. Look, I need a towel and a pulpit as I'm preaching, but I really do, because I want to see the heart that Tusol have continue to impact and grow. I want to see where this goes, and I'm sticking around. That's why I'm here.
Rob, that's so awesome. Well, we're so excited for you to be here with us today, as I've said. So guys, if you have any questions during this, like I said before, we would love for you to engage. This is what I can do. It's really cool. I can pop your things right on the screen. Seth, you're currently in Satterton, PA, but you'd rather be quarantined in Norway. That's good.
That's
Fiji, Norway, New Zealand. We're all doing some good things here. So yeah, anytime during this webinar virtual event thing, you guys can drop your comments and we will get to them at a Q&A towards the end, or if we have like some breaks in between, we'll potentially take questions then. But please engage with us. We are here to build community, and I'm just thrilled to have Rob here with us today, and he's going to blow your mind with his story. So again, we're so excited you're here. And Rob, take it away with your keynote, Just Add Water.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Thank you, Christy. I'm glad to be here. And when Christy asked me to talk, and it's like, Rob, hey, I just want you to chat and kind of kick us off, I was so amped. And I'm amped to share this because I've been working on a book on missions, and I'd finished it, and I was like, and all these things that had come from conversations that I'd been having over the last 6 years were just, they were just so amazing. So I thought they would be relevant to what's happening tonight. And hopefully you can hear me out. And hopefully this talk just really gets you thinking. It really stirs your heart to be like, you know what? Maybe in the season, I might have thought I'll put this in the 2021 bin, and it's still 2020. So I want to encourage you to stay plugged in and live in the now. So my name is Rob. I'm a pastor in Doylestown, like Christy said, and awesome family. But we didn't just pop here. We didn't just decide to move to the United States. Like, hey, let's plan a cool move. It all happened. Yeah, it all happened because I just all of a sudden, as a 30-year-old 6 years ago, struck with this terrible illness called renal failure, kidney failure, and I'd never been sick my whole life. And so, at that point, I was just a healthy 30-year-old, and then next thing I knew, I was in the ICU in a Zimbabwean hospital, dying. And it just was so surreal for me to think that I was in that position, in that situation. But I will preface it with this. About 4 years before I got sick, I started wanting to reach people in my community, and I started going. We planned this Valentine's Day outreach into the red light district of Harare, which I'd never been to, and this idea just popped in. Like on Valentine's Day, how about we go and share love with the people who don't feel loved, and so we went to the prostitutes, as I thought. We're going to go to the prostitutes and we're going to give them roses and pray for them. And that sparked a mission that night called Dare to Serve. It never quite starts like an organization. It always starts like it's just a bunch of friends who want to do something radical, like pack their bags and go 7,500 miles away. But in hindsight, that one decision was so life-changing and literally life-saving, not for the people on the streets alone, but it saved my life. And God was like positioning me into the place that I was always meant to be. Now, I want you to hear me out. I didn't go out there to become someone. I didn't go that night, February 14, 2010, to do something grand. I went to do a small step of obedience. It really was just that. Like, Lord, I am not equipped to do this, and I'm going to go anyway. And in that, a bunch of people showed up, and it grew, and it kept growing, and this movement kept on gaining momentum. And instead of just serving people on the streets, we started working with children on the streets. We started working in orphanages, and it just started to grow as different people came in with a different heart, we would just say, we want to take on that heart. And, you know, and all I say this is that it finally got me to a point where I could travel and actually talk to people in other countries about this. And that's how I landed in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I was sharing with this church this thing that was on our hearts to continue reaching the people in Harare, to encourage them, you know, to serve and to serve sacrificially. That's not an easy ask to ask, you know, teenagers and people in their early 20s, but we're just like, just serve sacrificially. And so this church invited me, and they were like, dude, we love you. We're going to come to Zimbabwe. And I was like, yeah, come. I didn't know where I was going to put them. You know, Americans stick out like a thumb in Zimbabwe. You know that. Like right now, I can't hear your accent, but in Zimbabwe, it's like amplified. And true to the title, just add water. That's the only word I can say in American. I can just say water. Just add water. That's my best. Just add water. That's all I can say.
So good.
Yeah, it's good. But anything else I can't. But water I can. And so it was just like, keep it simple. And these guys came, and I thought that was it. But a few months after they left, that's when my health deteriorated. And they were the church that said, hey, listen, Rob, it's one person 7,500 miles away, but we're going to use all our resources, and we're going to pull you out of that situation. We're going to do everything we can to save your life. Now, it's not the meat of what I want to talk about today, but I just want to say this, guys. When it's your life and a church is willing to say, for you, we're going to stop everything, and we're going to bring you over, and we're going to figure out a plan, and we're going to raise $250,000, and we're gonna speak to congressmen, and we're gonna phone hospitals day and night to save. When it's your life, it's worth it. And oftentimes we try and think, what is the value of actually stepping in to do something that may sound radical, that may sound like, what difference am I truly making? But I'll tell you this, to the life that it's making a difference to, it means everything. And so oftentimes I think, and this is what I really love about Tusol, is that it's definitely about the impact and relationship more than, hey, listen, how can we look like, you know, the organization of the century? But it's like, hey, we're working with what we have, and we're taking these steps as they come, with the right heart and the right attitude. So that's what happened to me. You know, 8 months later, after coming to the US, they had raised $250,000. And I'll pause there because I want to talk a little bit about this water deal. I think at the back, and it's so crazy you said that, at the back of my little missions book, yeah, that's what I have. It's like over 1.5 million people travel each year to go on missions. And I think this year, it's obviously a different statistic. You know, everything's down, travel's down, you know, hotels down, Chipotle in New Zealand is down, everyone's down. Like everything has taken a hit, including you watching this. You're like, man, this year didn't turn out, you know, the way that I thought. It only worked out for, you know, the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback. You know, Patrick Mahomes, he's the only one who's like, 2020, what a good year. 2020 is a great year. Everyone else, it's like, not, you know, a year to forget. But we're still in that year. And I think it's in moments like these where we are in a position where everything is tight and everything is difficult. That's where truly, I think, we have the opportunity to really shine. I think we have the opportunity to really step out and go, wow, like look at God. And I say this all the time, like, out of the goodness of your heart, I know that it wasn't just, and I'll say this, in my life, even as a pastor, even as a Christian, it hasn't always just been Christians. Like, God uses a whole bunch of people to do a whole lot of good. Like, he uses whoever's willing. And so I just want to encourage you with that, to say that that 1.5 million that was going all over the world, even as Christy said to start, was like, what kind of impact was that 1.5 million travelers or $2 billion really doing? And then she shared a personal story and a story out of relationship of someone who's now gone on to be a catalyst in other people in her circle. Can you imagine? Like now it's like not up to two soul. Now it's like she's on the road and she's going, hey, I can help you do what I did. And that's so true to Zimbabweans. Like I call them Zimbos because that's what we call each other. But for real, like it's just like I just lack the resource, or I just lack the push into this because I don't have access to it. And then it's just like, okay, we're gonna give you that push, and then all of a sudden, it's like I'm off to the races because I really truly want to be able to do what I've been called to do, or what I'm skilled at, or what I have a heart for. But I just need that push and that boost. So here's where the water comes in. If you're still tracking with me, if you're like, Rob, blah, 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 blah. But I think the first thing that I just wanted to say is that is to tell a little story leading into that. And I wrote this down when I was about 6, maybe younger, 5. My brother's 2 years older than me, so he was about 7. We're playing soccer outside, and we play soccer. You saw in the video, in the intro video, it's a big deal playing soccer out in the hood. And so we're playing soccer, and my brother broke his arm, and he broke his arm, and he's a tough guy. I mean, he's like 6'3" now and 230 pounds. He's like a big dude. So I feel like he's always been that. I was like, shucks, this kid's just always been 6'3" and 230 pounds. But he's 7, and his big 7-year-old breaks his arm, and he keeps playing, and he's running around with this wobbly arm. Like but he doesn't notice. He's just like playing. And and then my older brother, he goes, dude, look at your arm. Like literally, like maybe 4 minutes we've been watching this dangly arm going. He's playing, no pain. And then he looks at the arm and he's just like, ah! He looks at his arm, and it's like when he saw the broken arm, that's when like everything hit. Like the messages went to the brain, dude, you're in pain. And I remember this thing, and I was thinking about it. I was like, sometimes when it comes to even missions, sometimes we're just running around with a broken arm, and we're doing it, but we're just running around with a broken arm. And it's when people point out like, hey, that arm's broken, like that thing isn't quite working the way it's supposed to. And having gone on the ground and having people and having relationships that are reciprocal and building enough trust where Zimbabweans and Americans can be in the same space and say, this is what we really need. And then on this end, the people who are thinking of partnering, who have resources, saying, well, then that's what we want to help you with. And when there's that mutual, beautiful relationship, it's like it's pointing out the broken arms in each other, really, and saying, hey, we need a cast on that. And I say that to say that that's where I see the healthiest partnership. And if you're thinking about partnering, one thing that I know is with the training before you go, is that I love that you point out the broken arm before people get on the plane and get on the ground and go, we all have broken arms. Like we deal with on this end, we get the costs on this end. But it's important to go with that heart. It doesn't damage the work that's being done, and it actually edifies, it actually builds, and it develops leaders in the Americans that are going, and it develops these beautiful relationships on the ground. So here's the deal. The just add water bit is that we just have to keep it that simple. Hey, let's build strong relationships. Where there's a need, if I can meet it, I'm gonna try and meet it. Like when it's tough and I feel like I'm being called to meet it, I'm going to see it, and I'm going to try and make an effort to do that, because at some point my life, someone had to sacrifice in my story, and I'll touch that right at the end. So so the three things that come to my mind here is a story in John chapter 2, and it's from verse 1 to about verse 9. It's my favorite story, one of my favorite stories in the Bible, because Jesus turns water into wine. And everyone's like, Jesus is boring. I was like, first time out the gates, he was like, yo, let's get those bottles popping. So he goes to a party. The party is dying, okay? And the groom doesn't even know the party is dying. Like, Jesus gets on the scene, and if you don't know the story, his mom comes to him, and his mom says, yo, Jesus, stay out of wine. And Jesus is like, yo, stop tripping. You know, this is a different version. This is the Rob version. So he's like, hey, listen, chill out. You know, my time hasn't come yet. And then his mom's like, you know, just leaves the scene. And then Jesus tells these servants, and now that's what I want to really focus on, because we're the servants. Jesus goes, okay, there's no wine at the party. The groom's about to get into trouble. This party is about to be lame. This dude could actually go to jail for this, which is crazy to think. You know, take us back to those days when people run out of wine at their weddings and they go to jail. But it's like, that dude could have been in that much trouble. That's how serious it was. And then Jesus tells these servants who know that the deal is wine is running out. Jesus says, go fill these heavy jars, okay? Heavy jars, lug these and fill them with water. And these guys must be like, who is this dude? Like, you know, because they go and they fill the jars with water. They actually listen to Jesus. Now, we know Jesus is Jesus now, but back then it's just a random dude at our party who's just like, yo, guys, fill these jars with water. And these guys obey him. And the thing that I want to point out with is that there's a problem. They ran out of wine at the wedding. And then Jesus steps in and he's the solution. And what he says is, fill the jars with water. Fill the jars with water. And I think for me, even as I even quickly pause there, is that, you know, during COVID, the thing I've taken up is trying to be a cook. I try to be a master chef. I was like, you know, if I'm indoors, I might as well make gourmet meals. And but the problem is, like, I try and, you know, I don't even know if I'm going to get the word right, but I always use the excuse English is my second language. I try and spruce up, like, simple things like Bisquick pancakes. You know, like, I'm like, I'm going to make this, but I'm going to take this to another level, you know, vanilla essence and the recipe calls to just add water. The simple bit is just add water. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna just add water. I'm gonna make these the dopest pancakes. And I've flopped so many times because I've tried to outdo the mixture that's in there. The way it's supposed to be, I've tried to make it more than it is. And the story just reminds me of that, is that we don't have to make it more than it is. Like, we just have to remember that, hey, where there's a need, we're being called to meet it. And all these other things that we've invented over, you know, whatever, you know, centuries of following Jesus. Like, and then there's gonna be this, and this is gonna be the result. But really at the core is, where there's a need and you go and meet it, like, that's where we see Jesus work miracles. Like, the deal is, today you've heard an intro story of two girls that put their backpacks on and kind of put a pin on the map and said, that's where we're gonna go. But that's it. Like, you know, that's the obedient piece. That's the water piece. It's like, I'm just gonna go. And when those jars come back and they draw water out of those jars, it's not water anymore, it's wine. And years later, you look back and you go, all I had to say yes to was the first go. All I had to say yes to was that first, like, man, it seems radical. It seems crazy. It seems like, man, what am I going to say if a police officer comes to me when I'm handing a prostitute a rose? Like, I'm praying for her? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, right? Yeah, buddy, we've heard that a million times. Like, in all these stories that you hear, there's this element of risk. But that risk is, you don't know what's on the other side of that risk. And you know, I say that with the growth that I've seen in Tucson. Every time I think back, I'm from Zimbabwe, and I go, like, how did you, what? Like, at night, like, 19, like what? Like I think about that. And I also think about that when I think about my church. And I'm like, you guys really gave me $250,000? Like that's wild. Like, you guys raised $250,000. And I look at this one guy in particular in my church. His name is Michael, and I've shared this story before many times, and I'll continue to share it because someone saves your life, you'll talk about them for the rest of your life. I tell you. So this dude, like, he came on the missions trip to Zimbabwe a few months before I got sick. He was there. He obeyed and went on this missions trip, and I bet you, like, you know, I've interrogated him many times. I bet you he was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to do something. I'm going to play soccer with kids. But at the very, very depth of that mission trip was he was actually going to build a relationship with a guy that he would save. Because on August 26, 2014, Michael gave me his kidney. And from that moment, I'm partly white on the inside. It's just a beautiful story. It's like, I love bluegrass now. I can't help it, but I started listening to...
Chill from the story. Just ruined it. Chill. And then the bluegrass line.
I listen to country music now, and I can't help it. But no, the reality is, that's just a stereotype. But the reality is, he did something that he thought that's why he was doing it. But at the end of the day, there was so much more. I came to Doylestown thinking that I was asking for people to support me in ministry. But to be honest, like right now, you know, I'm the teaching pastor at the church that brought me here. Like, you know, crazy set of events. Now I'm a teaching pastor at the church, and I get to serve with these people that I love. Like, we could only see a little bit of what we were being called to do. Those servants, as they lugged that water, they could only see but a glimpse, a little glimpse of what was to come. But what was to come was the greatest thing that could ever happen in their lives, to be honest, because for the rest of time, those servants are going, listen, I'm the dude who carried the jar. I'm the dude who obeyed. I filled water to the brim. I made sure that there was so much wine because I obeyed the illogical to the brim. And that produced this miracle to the brim. And so I'll say that to you guys to say, you know, you don't know what value you're bringing and putting into people's lives, because every one of those of the people that I know True Soul are connected to, their names, their faces, they're Robs, and they have hopes and dreams, and I'll say this last thing because I know I've gone over, but I'll say this last thing to say, you know, this is one thing I wanted everyone to hear. You know, oftentimes, you know, you can get on this trip where you watch televangelists and then they go, okay, now look into the camera, you know, and there's a spiel and it's like, okay, like, you know, I know what's coming. But for me, from a real point of truth in my own life, is that those moments, like the sacrificial time of going to that area, to the red light district at night, you know, not knowing what would happen to me, or getting on a train and saying, you know what, I'm going to use my savings to go to Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and end up landing there and it not making sense, or, you know, countless other things that God has led me to that seemed illogical, whether it was, you know, just like, yo, I don't even know why I'm doing this, but you can have my car, or whatever that is. And that's happened in my life, to say it's not like a kind of a wealth, health, and prosperity vibe, but it's like just obeying God and going, listen, if I see a need and you tell me to meet it, like, I'm not trying to fight it, because I know that you're at work in that. Whether or not I ever get that opportunity or get that thing back, it doesn't matter. But in my heart, I know that I felt you nudging, and therefore you must have been nudging me for that other person. And I don't know what that other person's been praying. And so this year is tight. This year is real. It's real. But even in this year, I've seen people go, even though I didn't make what I thought I was going to make, even though I didn't think I was going to do what I was going to do, I still went out and said, hey, what can I do? And that's why I think it's important to hear stories like that, because we have no clue what that looks like 6 years down the line. No clue. But to be a part of it is an unforgettable experience when you're on the other end and you look back and you're like, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I came through. So yeah, that's me. That's my story. And I am sticking to it, and I'm so glad that I could be on this to kick us off tonight.
Rob, that you'll always come to inspire. That's for sure. Thank you again for sharing that with us. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to drop them in the comments. We're going to take about 10 or so minutes of questions, but we'll start with some that we got a little bit before we actually came live. So Rob, here's the first one. So you talked a lot about missions experiences and how important it is to just go, because we're not sure what that's going to lead to. And in your case, it led to a literal life being saved. So that wasn't the purpose of the trip. So what are some of the first steps to take when deciding on missions experiences within the church? So for pastors listening or students listening, like, what are some of those things that we should ask ourselves before we decide to go into a community that's different than the one that we've grown up in?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, a good question to ask is, are we going anywhere? Have we gone somewhere? And really understanding, like, I always hear someone say, you can't spell gospel without go. And so there's a going that has to happen, like, you have to go. And I think that's a first question, because sometimes we assume, even for me, I just assume that churches they're always thinking outward. But I think 2020, another symptom of the church, I'm a pastor at a church, it's become very inside. Like, it's because sometimes when you're dealing with everything that's happening inside, mass, no mass, are we gathering, are we not gathering, it starts to be a very insider thing. But when you even look, as a church in the Bible, like, even when Peter's writing to persecuted churches in Asia Minor who were like under Nero's rule, he's still telling them, like, yo, like, you need to keep going. And so that's the first thing. And then I think after really establishing that, I think it's thinking about partnering with places where you can see the broken arms in the past, and you're just going, we don't want to perpetuate, like, a broken system. So where is their true empowerment? Where's their mutual partnership? Like, I think a good question to ask is, when in organizations, like, hey, we go to Haiti or we go to Venezuela, but I never see the Venezuelans and I never see the Haitians. That's a good thing to go, hey, are these guys truly building these partnerships that are reciprocal? And I think that's a beautiful thing, because that's more sustainable long term.
Yeah, that's so good. That's such a good answer. Thank you, Rob. Okay, so I have one more that came in. So this one is one that I'm really interested in, and I think that this is something that I struggled with when I started going on study abroad programs, and also, started the work in Zimbabwe. I have a little bit of a better idea now, but for people that are relearning, and because this is a journey for all of us, we're never done learning, especially when we're coming from a background and going into marginalized communities. What ways have you seen American bias show up in the mission field? And how can we identify those biases and serve communities better, even though we have those biases?
Yeah. Well, I talk a little bit about this, where I say, when I first came to the United States, I landed in Orange County, and it was the first place I'd ever been to. I was like, this is awesome. Like, even the birds are happy to be in America. I'm like, the birds are singing, the dogs. I'd never seen dogs treated like that in my life. But as we're walking through the streets, I was like, all dogs don't die and go to heaven. They die and go to America. That was my conclusion. They just land in the States. They were in strollers and bunnies on. But not one of the things I observed is that, like, there's a lot of pride, and there's a lot of pride in your nation, and that's a good thing, and that's an awesome thing to see. I was like, man, I wish I was proud of my country as much, because I just saw these flags outside houses, which in Zimbabwe would blow my mind. If I walk down the street with Zimbabwean flags, I'll be freaking out. I'll be like, where have I landed? But here there was so much pride. And what I would say is, like, everything should work like it works in America is something that you almost have to say, no, that's not how it's going to be when we go on the mission field. Like, you have to be willing to throw out that bias, because you grow. Even my kids are American, and they grow up going, you know what, we're you turn on the news, the greatest nation in the world. Like, that's a thing instilled. So when you go, you tend to often go with that because it's what you've been taught, and that may shape your worldview. But I think when you get on the ground, it's important to go, I'm not here to make this place America. I'm here to live alongside with the people on the ground. And that, I think, as I've stayed here longer, I've realized that I need to have more grace for that, because it is something that I think you see in every area of your life when you're here, that pride in nation. And so just to know that, you're not going away to basically to spread American culture. You're going to serve, and hopefully the flag you fly highest is the kingdom of God, because that's the most important flag to fly the highest. So that's one.
That's really good. So basically, first, from what I'm hearing, we have to really change our mindset. We have to understand that we're going into a situation with the mindset and the biases that we've been raised in. And the point of going abroad is to partner with people and to learn and to educate ourselves, rather than coming over and trying to colonize in any way or preach American ideology. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate. You and I know, the big stumbling block when you land in Zimbabwe is, no matter how many times you tell the team to get ready for time, time is the big old it's just a wall in the, because you just have never functioned in a society where time doesn't mean what time means here.
Yep, that's always been a fun challenge when we do our high school residency program, but it's good. It's good. I feel like I'm meant to live on Zimbabwe time, because I'm pretty much late for everything. My mom has always told me, because I came into this world a month early, I was born a month early, I'm just making up for the excess time. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Rob, I have one more question for you. I'll do some more if people drop them in the comments. We'll go back to that. But could you just tell people a little bit about, I know we've talked a little bit about one of your newest books that you're working on. Could you just give us a little bit of insight on some of the most important themes, and why people should pick it up, why it's important to pick up?
Yeah. Well, the book that's currently available. So like Christy said, like even now I'm struggling to think, like, what book is she talking about? Which is cool. It's like it's a cool it's a cool thing to have, but yeah, I wrote a book called The Blessing in Less. So that's available on Amazon. And really it points to, the season that we're in. We were forced to have less. We were forced to have, less entertainment. There was just a lot of less, and it's kind of the circle's kind of starting again. Toilet paper's kind of missing again, and so I've been. I always say this, I've been a trillionaire once, and so I've lived through empty shelves and toilet paper missing, and that's what really brought my heart to a point of like, well, why don't you write a book to people who are seeing these empty shelves in stores for the first time, and what could you encourage them with? And was like, hey, you know what, like, less is not always a curse. Sometimes it is a blessing, because sometimes it takes away, depending on where you are. If you've been in a place of excess, sometimes less is a blessing because it brings you back to the things that truly matter. Now, if you've always grown up with less, that's a different situation, but then in this place, the main theme of the book is just going through all these parts in the Bible where God used the less in these people's lives to amplify, who he was. And so yeah, it's fun. It's got lots of fun stories. I tell fun stories, and in the book, I tell my funny experiences of less. But I also just, in every chapter, have tried to look at something, that people really go through, whether COVID or not, and point to, hey, listen, this could actually be a blessing in your life. And so yeah, so it's a fun book. It's a fun time.
It's so good, Rob. So good. So, okay, let me see real quick. All right. So if anyone has any questions for Rob or myself, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I will make sure that they get passed on to the appropriate person sometime before the end of this week. Rob, oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here, and for everyone that tuned in. I really hope you guys got as much out of Rob's words as we do literally every single time we get to talk with you in any scenario. Rob, you're so great. Seth Umbenhauer, I'm going to call you out real quick for participating. Thank you so much. We're going to be sending you some Tusal swag and a copy of one of Rob's books. So give him a woo. So excited about that. Yes. Seth, give me a shout at Christy at 2secondsorless.org to claim your prize. Rob, before we just wrap all this good stuff up, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers?
Yeah. Hey, thank you for tuning in. So glad that you spent this time with me. Now, I don't want to go without saying this, to say, listen, there's an opportunity, obviously, for the extra give, and that's coming up. I hope I don't get this wrong, but I think it's next week. And yeah, even in this season, guys, like, I think, we have an opportunity, and truly an opportunity to shine. And I've been saying that to say, when everyone is kind of like, oh, like, this is actually an opportunity and a season to go, listen, we're going to go over and beyond, and people are going to look and go, wow, like, look at how they gave, and look at what they did, even in the year that everyone wanted to delete. Look at what happened in Zim. Look at how. So yeah. So I think even now, I'm just speaking to you directly to say, hey, if you hear this, you heard my story, you heard this, you heard the questions, your heart's there. Like, let's give this a real push, and let's really get Tusal on the road and get them back in, and get them going into 2021 better than ever. And so that's my big push. Let's go.
Yes, thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for just sharing all that with our viewers. We're actually currently in a nonprofit boot camp right now called Race for Good. And one of the things that they shared with us recently is how people are just feeling fatigue from almost like not being able to give back this year, like not having volunteer opportunities, not being in community and like making a difference in the world. There's actual fatigue around like not being able to serve. And so we just want to encourage you at 2 seconds or less. that we are here with you. We're trying to find new and innovative ways to serve every day. And yeah, like we just want to encourage you that although it's such a hard time, we can still be making a huge difference around the world virtually from our couches. There's still so much that we can participate in, and whether that is 2 seconds or less for you or another organization that's near and dear to your hearts, please get out and get out from home, metaphorically get out and do something with your time and your money and your talents and your resources. And we believe in you. So to wrap up, don't forget that this Friday, not quite next week, Rob, but very close, this Friday is Lancaster's Extra Give, which is, if you guys don't know, it's the biggest day of giving where you can have your donations matched by a stretch pool of $1 million. Our goal this year for 2 seconds or less is $2,500, which is able to give so many scholarships to women, as well as really like bulk up this new education program that we are not new, continuing, evolving education program that we are working on right now, that we are trying to push out into our community in a time where we can't be together. It will really help us deliver our resources virtually to you guys. So we're really excited about that. We love you. We're so happy you tuned in. We hope you stay safe. And if you weren't aware, please tune in with us tomorrow at the same time, because we're going to be hearing from Simeon Hera on some stories of him growing up in the missions field as a missionary kid. Thanks again, Rob. You are so great. And to everyone else, hope you have a great night. See you next time.
Cheers.
Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion. Like how a single word can make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. And all those things I didn't say were wrecking balls inside my brain. I will scream loud tonight. Can you hear my voice this time? This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me. Losing friends and I'm chasing sleep. Everybody's worried about me. In too deep. Say I'm in too deep. It's been 2 years, I miss home. There's a fire burning in my bones. Still believe. Yeah, I still believe. And all those things I didn't say were wrecking balls inside my brain. I will scream loud tonight. Can you hear my voice this time? This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned off. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me. A lot of fight left in me. Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion. Like how a single word can make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. know I've still got a lot of fire left in me.
Hey, Rob. I was so excited to have such like an epic song with the donation thing, but a bunch of people were texting me questions during the song. So I'm gonna ask you 2 quick questions and then we're gonna wrap up, okay?
Yeah. No, that's all good. That's all good.
It's funny. I was like, oh, epic ending, but that's okay because I think it's more important for people to hear from you.
Yeah,
So
that's all
here we go. Rob, from your experience and perspective with all the needs around the world and in our own country and congregations even, how should a church go about choosing where they should send a mission team? And why should they choose Zimbabwe in particular?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a really good question. You know, it's it's a question where I go, why Zimbabwe? Like, you know, and as a Zimbabwean, of course, I am extremely biased. So I'm, you know, I go, yeah, of course, you know, send them to Zim. And but I think that is a thing that I really think the most fruitful partnerships and engagements are ones where you've really prayed about it and you feel like this is where the Lord is leading you. I'll say, you know, I think the question I could ask, you know, I could ask that same question to Christy to say, why Zimbabwe? A good friend of mine, you know, they had that question, like, you know, they have an organization in Chicago and they were like, why do you go to Angola and not south side of Chicago? And they were like, because God is calling us to go to Angola. And I feel like where God is really directing you as you've prayed through that, that's where you actually end up seeing fruit. Like like I said, it doesn't make sense, and it didn't make sense for the church in Doylestown to be all the way in Zimbabwe. But in hindsight is 2020. You go, oh wow, I can see the beautiful things and the beautiful ways that God has worked in this decision to go somewhere where we wouldn't normally go, or it's not the easy 2-hour plane ride. And so, you know, sometimes God works in the not so obvious and in that journey. And so, yeah, like that's what I would say. It's truly asking God, like, is this where you want us to be? And not letting finances or convenience dictate whether or not that's going to be it. That's what I would say too.
Yeah, that's so good. I would add that I think it depends like what kind of missions opportunity it is, but I think it's always important to look at the talents and the resources that you're able to give communities. So, for example, if you have no medical training, you probably shouldn't be going on a medical mission, but I know that's appealing to some people. And so it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to serve here. I think it's different if you go on any mission to specifically for like the purpose of education. And so you really have to ask yourself those questions as you're also just, you know, praying about what does God have in store for me at these places. But I think sometimes, we go into communities that already have human capital there that can solve the problems. And instead of pouring into them, we're like, well, I'm not a master carpenter, but I'm going to build these 7 things rather than like hiring local talent. And there's always a way, I think, to better partner, or at least go in with like an educational frame of mind. Throwing that little piece of wisdom out. And then Rob, last question for you. This goes back to kind of what you were talking about as far as the blessing and less and this current season. I thought this was a really good question. How do we encourage people to not take their eyes off the needs of the world when so many are going through scarcity in their own lives, maybe for the first time, especially in 2020? Not everyone is looking as less as a positive. So how do we encourage people to not take their eyes off what the world needs, even when they're experiencing scarcity themselves?
Yeah, you know, everyone's situation, you know, it's hard to equate what everyone's version of scarcity is. Someone's scarcity is, we're not going to Disneyland this year, and that is, I mean, subjective, right? Like, because coming from Zimbabwe, I'm going, well, yeah, it's been difficult, but it's not the same kind of difficulty. But I know that even in that question, it's real to the person. It's real to you, that loss and that less. And not to, but to lovingly push and nudge and to say, what is really what is that scarcity and what is stopping you from doing that? If it's like, yo, I'm out of a job and I have to really think about where I'm at in my life, like, yeah, looking at that, like bars, some super, nudging from the Lord to go, regardless, I'm going to do this, and that's between you and God. But yeah, I think it's to assess that. I remember that being one of the things when I was still in Zimbabwe support raising, and there was a giver who was really kind to us. But it was hard to stand in that room and hear them say, this year is really tough and we're not going to give because we're not going to Zanzibar this year. And I was like, but you're still going to Cape Town. It was like, we're going to Cape Town instead of Zanzibar, and so we're not going to give to what you're doing. And so in that moment, as awkward as it may be, was to lovingly push and say, hey, like, you've done so much, and we're not trying to twist your arm, but like, just look at the work that you've been able to do with us, and maybe reconsider what that might look like. And so, yeah, it's really truly looking and assessing. And sometimes we don't want to look in those crevices in our hearts. I certainly don't want to. I certainly make a case for, Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu, and because I'm like, well, how else am I going to watch The Princess Diaries like 30 times? So in that moment, it's just like, okay, you know what? I think, Lord, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to miss out. And I think that's when sacrifice starts to happen. And it's like, okay, cheers to the Queen, season 3, or whatever is hot now. I don't know.
Yeah. Rob, that's so good. Like, sometimes deciding, even when we are living in scarcity, what does scarcity actually look like in our circumstances? And I know people are experiencing different different scales of scarcity throughout this country right now. We do have to be cognizant of that. But even sometimes I know, with COVID and doing a nonprofit, and I'm a wedding photographer, this season was tough. And I think oftentimes I'm like, I want to hold on to my resources because they're what makes me comfortable. Yeah. But then you really do have to think, well, if I really want to change the world in a palpable and like responsible way and give back, what kind of sacrifice is it going to take? And is it really that big of a sacrifice? Like, maybe I'm not bringing as much money in as usual, but I still got Starbucks twice this week. Or I still signed on up for Disney Plus this month to watch Hamilton. So yeah, I think that's like a really beautiful sentiment, is sometimes when we decide we do want to give back, but there's that fear there. Sometimes we just have to push out that scarcity mindset and say, what am I willing to sacrifice? And know that it's going to be for the greater good, especially if it's Jesus led, especially if, the Lord is nudging us in whatever way.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to call those parts of our hearts the behind the fridge parts of our heart. Like, we don't know, no one wants to go and clean behind the refrigerator until they're moving out. It's like, I know not to go there. And there's this feeling that those pieces are that, like it's like, if no matter how tough times are, there's certain things that I'll keep that cost me like $12 a month. But then it's almost like, oh man, why was I quick to let this go? And I'm a pastor, and I'm saying this, full disclosure, that there are those things that I go, okay, all right, am I truly sacrificing here? And also understanding that there are people who have experienced like very real loss, and it's not to make less of that. Like I experienced very real loss. And if you had walked into my hospital room and said, "Hey, Rob, the blessing and less,
Yeah.
you know,
Shut
I
up.
would be like, get out. I can't see it yet. Get out. But leave the cookies. So that's the thing in our hearts that you just have to be really discerning. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. Even just like, sorry, last thing that I'll say, I think that's so good to point out because yes, we don't ever know where people are coming from. But even you saying like the $12 thing, that just like hit me because one of our scholarships for these women to get weeks of training is $11. And so that's literally 2 Starbucks drinks a week. And this woman, Joanna, is now producing 200 chickens and has helped scale 10 businesses with her community members and her friends because of $11. So yeah, that like putting that into perspective just kind of like blew my mind there. You're always doing that, my friend. Always doing that.
I'm glad to hang out with you. I'm glad to hang out with the Two Soul fam. Like, it does that to my heart as well. So it's good.
Good. Well, Rob, we are going to wrap it up now. Would you mind praying us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely don't mind.
Thank you.
All right. Lord, we just thank you for this time. I thank you for everyone who watched. And I thank you for the work that you're doing all around the world. Lord, we know that this is a unique season where, we're seeing different countries handle this pandemic in different ways. But I thank you, Lord, for even just this platform and just this organization, Two Soul, Lord, in how they're staying the course and they're staying in the game and they're going, listen, we're going to continue to fight for the people that we know, that we've built relationships that we love, and the projects that we see that are needed now more than ever. And so I just pray, Lord, for partners to come alongside that, who share that heart. And I pray, Lord, that it wouldn't be an either or. It wouldn't be like, should I help here in the US and help there? But Lord, equip people, bring those people who are able to say, hey, I'm in this because I resonate with that message. I resonate with what God's doing in that space and in the lives of the organization, and just come alongside it, Lord, and just blow wind into their sails. And I thank you for all the wilderness that this has been, that we're learning stuff, but even though we're grieving the loss of the people who are close to us in our communities, Lord, we know it's not for nothing, that this pain is not wasted. And so, Father, I just pray that we continue to keep our eyes fixed on you and stay the course. I pray this for everyone watching, wherever they are. I pray a blessing on them as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you again so much, Rob, and hopefully we will see some of you tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.